John Wick Chapter 2 is the sequel to the surprise 2014 hit John Wick, and this movie takes place a little bit after the first movie. John Wick is finally done. He just wants to retire once again and just live out the rest of his life with his new pit bull dog. Unfortunately though, someone he knows from the past comes up at his doorstep, says, "You took a blood oath for me, and now it's time for you to repay that," and now John Wick reluctantly has to do a job for this person, and then the film escalates from there. I won't say anything else about the plot because the trailers did a very good job of keeping it very vague, but I loved the 2014 film John Wick. I thought it was incredible, one of the better action films to come out at that time, and since the director was coming back and had the same writers coming back, I could not wait to see what they were going to do with a sequel, because this is a sequel that people actually were asking for, and they did a spectacular job with this film. Though it might not be as amazing as the first movie, I still love this movie a lot. I am convinced that the role of John Wick was specifically written for Keanu Reeves to play him. In the first movie, it was a natural fit, and in this movie, it continues once again. They give him certain lines of dialogue that I honestly can't hear anyone else say except for Keanu Reeves. I think only Keanu Reeves could make that work. Plus, Keanu Reeves just has such a likability as an actor that when you see him as the John Wick role and you're seeing all the stuff he does, you can't help but root for the character because Keanu Reeves is such a cool guy. I also really like the addition of Common in this movie as pretty much John Wick's equal. He's not the main antagonist, but he runs into John Wick a couple times and they have a couple fights and they're awesome. Whenever these two fought, it was honestly some of the best stuff in the whole movie, because that's one of the greatest things about the stunts of this movie, is that it mainly is Keanu Reeves doing it. Like, there's training videos of him going those super fast speeds that you see him do in the movie. There's a training video of him doing that, going behind cover and pulling out his gun real quickly, pulling out his other one. It's incredible. And you can just feel how hard the stunt team really worked to make everything feel genuine, because you see Keanu Reeves actually doing this stuff and you're like, I actually could see this happening in the real world. Lawrence Fishburne shows up for a little bit. A lot of people are hyping this up as it's the Matrix reunion, Neo and Morpheus, and Lawrence Fishburne isn't in the movie a whole lot. I want to get hyped up that he's in it, but when he does show up, it is pretty cool to see him and Keanu back on screen together, I'll say that. You have a couple familiar faces showing up, like John Leguizamo, the hotel guy at the Continental, and Ian McShane, who runs the Continental. They were all really good to see, especially Ian McShane. And also what I really liked was the villain of this movie. I don't think he's as intense as the villain of the first movie, but I think here he did a very good job kind of being like the psychological villain to John Wick. Though he might not compare to John Wick physically wise, mentally you can actually see him messing with John Wick a bit, and I like that a lot. And of course, everyone wants to hear about this one. It's the obvious thing to talk about with these John Wick movies, the action scenes. They're still incredible in this movie. In fact, though the story might have flowed better in the first John Wick, the action here is actually better than the first John Wick. I mean, the film literally opens with an intense car sequence. That's all I'll say. There's plenty of cars and motorcycles going around. It's really incredible. And as soon as that scene concluded and we got the title card, I was like, I am in for something really special here. And I'm not trying to say that the movie like blew its whole load in the opening scene of the movie. I'm saying that with each different action scene later on, after the opening action scene, there is always something new about it, something that I really love. For one, something involving a pencil, and that's all I'm gonna say. Holy crap! One of my favorite action scenes, though, was involving this glass maze that I won't spoil much about it, but it was really cool to see. I like the idea of just people trying to survive other people in like this glass maze where you really don't know where they are. I like the whole concept of that scene. I love how they brought that to fruition with this movie. And what's so great about this movie is that it's from the director of an actual stunt guy, and same as the first one, it's the same director. So with each action scene, you can definitely feel a love for that type of scene. You can feel a sort of passion for making a genuine action scene that people can follow, people can actually get behind and root for the characters you're supposed to root for, instead of just being confused because there's shaky cam everywhere. Believe it or not, the director, being a stunt guy, can actually make a competent action movie. In fact, it's not just a competent action movie, it's one of the best action movies. And even though I said the story flew better in the first John Wick, this one still has a really good story. For example, anything involving the assassin world, how they built up the world just a little bit more. For the most part, I really like that. They go to Rome at some point and show off some stuff there. They also explain some rules about the Continental that I didn't know before in the first John Wick. And I also really like the dialogue between John Wick and other people that are involved in the world, because it's just so clever. It's the kind of dialogue where these two people who are involved in this world are talking in a kind of code, where if you know what's going on, you will know exactly what they're talking about, but if you didn't know who they are, you would still listen to them and it'd sound like a different conversation. I don't know, there's something about that kind of dialogue that I really like. However, I do have at least 3 flaws. However, 2 of them are, I think, kind of nitpicky, and they'll probably come across as nitpicky to you, and 1 kind of legit flaw, so I'm not going to discount the movie by a whole lot, but I do want to talk about these things. Problem number 1, I know they build up John Wick as the boogeyman, but there's literally one scene where it feels like he apparates into someone's room like a ghost, and the way they show this off and the way they show a character realizing that John Wick is in their room was just kind of dumb, and it made me think, how in the world did you do that? Problem number 2, there's one scene where John Wick kills people at a subway station. The subway rolls up, no one is freaked out that there are dead bodies there, and no one is freaked out that John Wick has blood over his face. Like, okay, I don't know how about that. But those are the 2 that are kind of nitpicky for me. But there's one issue that I did have, is that even though I love the world building of this assassin place, the Continental, and all that, but there's one thing that really bugs me about it, and it's when they show off how many people are actually involved in this. And I was just like, that's pushing it just a little bit. And I didn't really like how they showed off said revelation. I think if they kept it a lot more vague, like they did with the first movie. In the first movie, you didn't really know who was who, and when people were just like, oh, hey, John, you were like, oh, they're a part of the assassin world, okay. But in this movie, they definitely don't keep it as vague, and I was honestly really disappointed about it. But overall, those flaws really don't discount the movie that much. I really love John Wick Chapter 2. It's intense. You actually fear for your action hero. You don't know if they're going to survive, which is something that every action movie requires. This is an action movie lover's dream of a film right here. And if you love the first John Wick like myself, you will probably love this movie too. You should, at least. So I'm gonna give John Wick Chapter 2 an A. It's slightly not as good as the first John Wick, but still, this is an incredible movie that you need to go see right away. Keanu Reeves is such a badass, and I can't wait to see more of the John Wick world, because they announced that they're working on Chapter 3 right now. So hey, that's gonna be pretty freaking sweet. But if you've seen John Wick Chapter 2, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.